Hey, everybody, welcome back to another episode. I'm Chad Bruckner. On today's chat, it's very inspirational. We're going to be talking with Bonnie Rumely. She is a licensed clinical social worker and she works exclusively with first responders. She also is a first responder as an EMS technician and just a rich experience working in the field, both as a operator and as a clinician. So, tremendous human being. And what really attracted me to Bonnie and wanting to have this conversation to bring to you is EMDR. This is one of the things that services she provides as a clinician, and first, so many first responders, so many veterans still don't know what this is. We got to get this out. EMDR. I'm going to put it right here on the screen. Eye movement disassociation. Is that what it is? And reprocessing. Oh man, I think I messed that up. Eye movement disruption reprocessing. I don't know. I'm going to get it wrong. It doesn't matter. I'm not the professional, so I'll put it right here. But Bonnie is the professional. She's going to talk about EMDR. I can tell you what it is as a practitioner, somebody that goes through it myself. And it is an amazing modality. It has helped me reduce my stress. It has helped improve my mental health, emotional health tremendously just from doing a few sessions. So I don't say that lightly. My EMDR person is located local near to me. Bonnie is not my clinician, but she is somebody that I've gotten to know just professionally from afar, and somebody I imagine is a great clinician with an eye for really caring about her patients. So, I hope you watch this video with Bonnie and say to yourself, you know what? I could go through EMDR. I should go through EMDR. This can really change my life and bring a lot of balance to my life and help calm the emotion to manage it, because that's really all it is at the end of the day. So for so many first responders and veterans, we're dealing with so much that we struggle to manage the emotions and to balance ourselves. So EMDR is a great tool. You can go through 2 to 3 sessions after you do the initial intake stuff. 2 to 3 sessions, you feel markedly better. It's amazing. So highly recommend EMDR. It's not some wonky science. The VA does it. It's recognized by all the major boards, it's a great modality. So I hope you watch Bonnie talk about EMDR and you say to yourself, I'm going to learn more about it. I'm going to Google it. I'm going to recommend or share this video with somebody I know that I think could benefit from it, because that's really how we start to change this mental health crisis in this country, this emotional health problem we have. So that's how we do it. So enjoy the conversation with Bonnie. Reach out to her if you need some EMDR services. The best part of this is, like I do for mine, it can be done in person and it also can be done remotely. That is a huge distinction I think you need to know. And it's just as effective remotely. I haven't noticed any difference when I go through it. So that's for me. It's been really amazing. So I hope you enjoy this chat for Bonnie, and take care of yourself. Step into who you are. Be the person that the world needs you to be. We're all waiting on that. Have a good day. Hey, Bonnie, how you doing? Thanks for being here today.
Hey, Chad. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, we're just talking a little bit offline. I'm talking about EMDR, and I know we're going to get into it because people don't know what it is. But real quick about you, because we're going to talk all about EMDR, and if you could just talk a little bit about yourself and who you are and where you're from and what you do, because that LCSW is a lot of people don't know what that is. That even in law enforcement, like, what is that? So I would love to hear people
Exactly.
hear about that, and then we'll talk about what you do.
Sounds great. So I'm a licensed clinical social worker. I have a master's in social work, and then you do a series of supervision and meetings and a certain amount of hours, and then you get your license, which means that you can have a private practice or supervise other people. And I've also been an EMT, kind of pseudo-retired at the moment. Not sure if it's forever, but in a little bit of a phase right now because my practice and the trauma team that I'm a part of are super busy right now. So I try to be a good model for myself and others that you can't do everything. So I had to make a hard choice and just focus on my career for the time being. But that's really how I got into working with first responders, because I am one.
Yeah, that's incredible. First of all, thanks for sharing that. And I'll share, since you shared that, I'll share what we were talking about offline, because I think it resonates with mental health, emotional health.
that I was working as a certified recovery specialist and I'm taking some time off because of the self-care aspect of it. And just, if I want to
Yeah.
be there for people, I have to be there for myself first. And it sounds like some of what you're going through. And I just think that speaks to your self-awareness and your character of wanting to be in this thing long term, because I think we both know a lot of people that have burned out from these kind of work and professions, and they probably help some people along the way, but if they're not in it long term, it's like, what's the point of all of it?
Yeah, no, and you're one person, so you have to be realistic about taking care of yourself first, because if your bucket's empty, you have nothing for everyone else who really needs you. So I try really hard to focus on self-care, to be the best person that I can be emotionally, physically, mentally. It's very important. And if people are coming to me for help, I need to model that I'm helping myself as well, in addition to that.
Hmm. And I bet you there's a lot of colleagues that probably are going through a lot, or maybe not managing their self-care like they should, and then they are treating patients and it just probably gets messy or muddy or convoluted.
Yeah, and also we're all human, right? So we all have times where either we're sick or a family member is not doing well and we need to take a step back. But I think it's knowing when your step back moment is, knowing when to tell the
Yeah.
people around you, like, I need to take a little breather here. And hopefully you're with people that understand that, friend-wise, colleague-wise.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. It's like, if you're not self-aware, you need people around you that you trust to kind of give you that feedback.
Right. Or the permission, because a lot of us helpers in the helping professions are, I don't want to say people pleasers, but we want everyone else to be okay. So I think it's very, very hard for people to take that step back, even in first responder world, therapist world, whatever kind of human services you're doing. It's very hard to think about taking a pause, because that also impacts people.
Man, yeah, very true. Yeah, very true. And being helpers, like, we don't say, I need help. We're like, where is the help? I'm ready to help, but we don't say, I need help. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's a good point. All right. So the reason I wanted to have a chat with you here is because the EMDR, it's people are like, what EMDR is. I'm going to have you explain it, but I just want to give a little introduction to this because I went through EMDR for the first time 3 years ago, and I probably only did 7 sessions, maybe straight through, like every other week or every week. And man, it made such a difference, such an improvement in my emotional health specifically, of just the stress reactions I was dealing with at the time, some of the nightmares I was having at the time. And it was such a process that somebody recommended I go through it. I went through it kind of having faith and being curious. And afterwards I said, why are more people doing this? I mean, it's amazing. Like, I do talk therapy as well. And I feel like, I don't know if my dad said this to me or not, but maybe you can know what this means. But he said, if psychotherapy is 20% effective and 80%, whatever, EMDR fills that gap where it's 80%, fill that other 80% where psychotherapy just won't be able to cover. So they're great modalities to work together. So I was, being a simple man, always explaining it to me that way. But yeah, so walk people through, what is EMDR? What does it stand for? What's the simplest way to explain it so we can help people go through and get it?
Yeah, I'll give you that explanation. And I just want to mention, we all do talk therapy, right? So whether you're an LMFT, LCSW, PsyD, psychiatrist, we all do talk therapy with our patients or clients, because we have to understand them. We have to understand what's bothering them, gather their history. And sometimes people just need to talk or figure out family problems, right? Marital issues, parenting issues. So we all do that talk therapy to an extent. The thing that I really love about EMDR is that it gets to the root of issues. So whether it's one trauma or pervasive trauma over time, EMDR treats the root in a way that talk therapy does not. You can absolutely feel better and feel relieved, and over time come to some new conclusions, epiphanies, changes in your life. Absolutely, you can. But from my experience, when you have real trauma that's sitting with you and living and breathing every day with you from the past, nothing is like EMDR. And that's what I tell clients. I talk about EMDR all day, every day, because I absolutely love it and just believe in it so much. And to become an EMDR therapist, you have to undergo EMDR therapy yourself. So a lot of people don't realize that, but we're not going to do anything with our clients that we haven't felt ourselves. And it's different for every person. What I feel when I do EMDR versus what you feel, it might be different, but we're looking to achieve the same thing. And so the name, it's very long, eye movement desensitization and reprocessing. It really is built on the premise of REM sleep. So at night, when we go into our deep sleep, we eventually get into a phase called REM, rapid eye movement sleep. And so it's during that REM sleep where our brain processes information from the day. So I basically think of our brain as a computer. And so at night, the computer goes into sleep mode and it goes through all the files of the day. Some will go in the trash. Some will get put into like a short-term folder for tomorrow, next week, next month. And then you have other memories that will go into more long-term. You know, like if I'm studying another language and I learn a bank of words or phrases today, hopefully those are going to go into the long-term memory bank at night. And so we do this every night, which is another reason why sleep is obviously so important to us. It's restorative for the body, but it's restorative for the brain, and it helps you process information. So what happens with trauma is that it gets log jammed in the brain. We see that people don't know how to process it. The brain attempts, and for some things it can process and can move through and move forward and store the memory. But we see that some traumas get stuck. They're often stuck with a negative belief of self, which people are not usually consciously aware of. But we as a therapist will sit with them and help them understand and come to a treatment plan and come to a goal which recognizes what that negative belief is. So if someone as a child was yelled at and sworn at, and when they made a mistake, they were told they were stupid or that they weren't going to amount to anything. When that child grows up and is adult, they believe that. The child part still believes, I'm stupid. I'm not going to amount to anything. And so that really gets tied in with the trauma, the negative belief. So if that person goes on, let's say they lose in their favorite sport in high school, in college, they get dumped by their favorite girlfriend, and then they get into a job in their 20s, something bad happens. We see that thread of I'm a failure going through all of those different scenarios. So it could be for first responders, one call that we go on where we didn't feel like we could help everyone, or there was one person we couldn't help. We will store that belief of I failed. See that? I could not help this person. And so a lot of times when we sit with first responders, we hone in on that. And then once we start doing EMDR therapy, we go to the past and we realize, wait a minute, there's a thread here. And this has been coming along with you all along the way, but this is the straw that broke the camel's back. So as the therapist, what we're doing is we're asking you to conjure up the trauma. So whether it's a recent one event or whether it's more pervasive, we figure out where we're starting. And then we will call up that negative belief of self. And that's when we do the rapid eye movement externally. So we're basically inducing REM sleep, although you're awake talking to us. So we do that through eye movements. So if you and I were having a session now, I might have you follow my fingers. Some of us have light bars. You know, it looks like the lights on a cruiser. You just follow the lights back and forth. And some of us use tappers, which are these little vibrating devices that just go in each hand. Either way, we are inducing processing, and we're inducing the movement from left to right, left to right. And so left and right brain are talking, therefore processing information. And that's when people get resolution.
So yeah, so that makes sense because you explain it away like I understand it, both sides of the brain. Because the reason I didn't want to do it at first, I'll be honest, is I thought it was like this form of hypnotism. So I was,
Yeah.
I didn't know anything about it. I was ignorant. So the more I learned about it, you're completely awake. It's inducing a sleep type effect, but you're having a conversation, you're awake. And I was so curious about it. So this can help me, and I'm totally awake from it. So I mean, what you said is great. What are the negatives? Like, what are the feedback or the criticisms that you think keep people or cops? First of all, let's go back. Who was your niche market? Like, who are you doing this the most for?
So primarily I work with first responders, although in my practice, I do have some civilians, and they typically have very, very severe trauma. So loss of a child, terrible accident, things like that. They're usually quite severe, and they come specifically for EMDR. But I would say primarily I'm focusing on first responders, and we know the stigma in the first responder world, which was the old way, don't get help. just deal with it. You can move on. So I think we all wrestle with that. You know that you fight that on your side too. But I think what scares people about EMDR is it sounds like voodoo. You know, you start telling someone, oh, I'm going to wave my fingers or let you hold these devices and then you're going to feel better after. They absolutely can't believe that something like that could work. And I think part of that is just being skeptical in general in our culture. But part of it might be being burned in the past. Maybe they've tried something or someone has promised an answer that didn't come to fruition. So I think there's a little bit of a mistrust in the first responder world. But what I do find is when people come to you and you explain it and you say, look, just trust me. Once you experience it and you feel a difference in one session, you really do.
You do.
So then the proof is in the pudding and they're less likely to dispute that because now they feel a difference. We haven't solved everything in one session, but after one 49-minute session, you can Google the brain scans on Google. EMDR after 49-minute session, and you see the brain is not working as hard. It's more calm. It's more organized, able to process information. You know, when someone's in high trauma mode, they could be stuck in fight mode. So their amygdala is just on fire and working really too hard. They might be irritable. They might be dysregulated. They might be super disorganized. But once we go in and start working on the trauma, we see those symptoms start to subside. And I think when people feel that, then they believe in EMDR. Then they want to tell everybody they know. And some of them go to work like, hey, you have to go try this thing. It sounds crazy, but you know, and when we get trained in it, we've had the same feelings. You know, I thought there's no way this thing could be as effective as what they're saying until I did it. And then I realized this will change my life, but it'll change everyone else's life.
If you're going through EMDR, does it matter the level or amount of trauma you've been exposed to? You said this earlier about a civilian. Like, is it more sessions or harder work for the cop or the first responder or the soldier who's seen a lot of things, or and lesser for civilian, like one or two times they can go through this and they're healed? Or how does that, what have you seen?
So there are different things. There's your classic EMDR that we do, which is, it can be a bit more long-term. You know, if I have someone who's coming in at 60, 70 years old and they've got 60 or 70 years of traumas, likely we're going to uncover or unearth some things that they weren't really consciously aware of, right? So often people will come in for one thing, but then once we really start taking our history and talking about our treatment planning, we realize there are a lot of other things to work on. So sometimes it does become a bit more long-term, I would say. And first responders and civilians are similar in that way. You know, I would say first responders, they tend to have a hard childhood, which got them into that line of work anyway. Not every single one, but the majority have had a difficult childhood. And now we've put them in a profession where for police, they see upwards of 400 to 600 critical events in a career. So we're coming with a bucket full from childhood, and now you're being thrown into these situations. Yeah, it's often complex trauma that we're working with, and that does take time. We do have a protocol that we all really love to do. It's called RTEP, Recent Traumatic Event Protocol. So if you had gone on a bad call yesterday or last week, and you call me and you say, Bonnie, I'm having a hard time, I would bring you in. And that one could be 1 or 2 sessions where we're just working on one specific incident. And that does happen.
What's the benefit of that? Just to keep operations moving, keep you going?
Yes. So for some people, they process things very well, but maybe something just gets stuck here and there. And it's a good way to unstick themselves. For others, they've done all that long-term work already of EMDR. You know, they've visited the childhood, the teen years, the 20s, and what's happening now. Now they're in a good place, but they're still a first responder. So they're still going on calls. So now I have people in maintenance mode who've done all their work, who come in just when they've had a bad call. And they're like, okay, I know it's sticking with me. I need to come in for 1 or 2 sessions, and then I may not see them again for a year or 2.
Yeah, that's great.
So
And that's where
ideal.
I'm in maintenance mode now, and I think
Good.
it's great you just said that because it makes me feel good, and two, we can set an example for others that
Yeah.
I was very intensive at one point. I was doing a lot of shadow work, and I'm in this place now where I get to maintain. I don't do EMDR anymore, which now you're making me realize I probably should, but I have other therapies I do every week, so it's just kind of where I'm at. And I think for first responders that end up watching this, it's we're all human beings, we all fall down. So if you can get to a place where you pick yourself up, surround yourselves with people like Bonnie and other people that can help you, it doesn't have to be long term. It doesn't have to be forever. And I think that's what they think. Oh, I'm broken. I'm damaged. I'm damaged goods and all this stuff. It's like, no, you're a human. You went through a period. You put some people around you that can help you. You rose back up, and now you put some maintenance stuff in there. And guess what? You're still going out and doing your thing.
Right.
That's kind of I think the prescription for all of us, because we're all going to suffer those things. But why some of us? What have you seen like treating first responders that those that can't really get through that or past that? Is there just a stigma and bias? Is there childhood stuff that rears up, or any common things you've seen?
I think sometimes with EMDR, you have to really just face everything head on. The only way through the feelings is through them. There's no bypassing. There's no easy way. And I think that sometimes people are so scared of their feelings. They're scared to feel. They were taught not to feel as children. We can't feel on the job when we're on that call, right? But no one's teaching first responders how to feel after the call either. So yeah, they're doing a great job. They're getting in there, doing everything and getting out, and they're not crying. But I see first responders who never feel what they saw on a call. And I try to explain to them that that was a human life. You do this job because you care. That was a human life. We have to recognize it as a loss, even if it wasn't your family member and you only knew that person for the half an hour you were there. It has deeply impacted you. A lot of first responders are sensitive people, empaths. We care so deeply. So I think those feelings are very, very scary. So if we can sort of work with someone and get them to trust us and get them to trust that their feelings are not going to hurt them, they've already lived the worst of all of it. Living through it the first time is the worst. But if we can safely get them to process it, because ultimately it's a thwarted processing that's happened.
Right. And EMDR, it's covered by insurance, right? I mean, it's not some voodoo backdoor science. I mean, this is like the VA does it and all these. I'm just trying to show cops and soldiers out there that this is normal therapy.
Yeah. It's covered. It's highly researched. A lot of the government entities use it. It's used all over the world. They've been using it in Israel for years. They even had a program in the schools. Because of the amount of bombings. So EMDR is huge around the world. And those of us who do it, we try to tell everyone we know about it. Or when you see an article come up on your feed, like I know Prince Harry was discussing it. I think Oprah's discussed it, Sandra Bullock. When people like that speak up, it helps our cause because then the general population sees, oh, wait a minute, what is this? Because those kind of articles obviously reach a bigger audience than Bonnie Rumley's little Instagram page,
Yeah. Well, listen, Bonnie, I'm hoping to blast your story out of what you do because you're right. Like if you don't have a celebrity talking about it, you don't really know what it is, and we need to be like little celebrities in the first responder community and help them see like this can help. This can save your life. It can save your family. It can save possibly divorce or substance use. There's so much that comes out of it by just saying, I need a little help. I'm not feeling good. I heard about this girl, Bonnie. I'm going to go subject myself to EMDR and see what goes. Like literally that could be the thing that changed your entire life, that 15 seconds admission. Yeah. And so do you have any success stories? People, cops or first responders, fire, EMT, you've treated that maybe were reluctant to it or maybe they're in a bad spot and they're thriving now?
Yeah, I mean, luckily, lots of those good stories, people who were on the verge of divorce or with alcoholism, about to lose their entire family, their job, everything. And they did the work and realized that it was all worth it. And they realized they had this hidden monkey on their back from a childhood or from an event that was really taking a hold of them and they didn't know. I've seen people on the brink of retirement, ready to pack it in because they felt they weren't effective anymore, and help those people see they had some more time to go. Once
Wow.
they did the work, they said, you know what, I think I'm going to hang in there a little longer. Because when we did EMDR, you get to the point where once you've processed the trauma, people get to themselves. They don't have this identity of the trauma anymore. They can be their genuine self if they allow that to happen. So they can tap into their strength and their gratitude and their fortitude and their teaching abilities. When you think about the young generations that come underneath us in police, fire, EMS, the onus is on all of us to train them. And if you're burnt out, not doing well, you're not imparting great habits and wisdom into the next generation. So if you think about it, helping someone not only helps themselves, their family, but they're helping all the people at work too, because when they see that person doing better, or the probie comes in to start, or the new recruit out of the academy comes in, and they have this FTO or this trainer that says, hey, how are you doing today? Like before you go in that cruiser and check out your rifle and everything else, how are you? And that could change everything. One question, but if we have that new person in and we give them the idea that, you just go get to the equipment. We don't care what happened to you yesterday or this week or where your wife is or kids, then that's going to be a different situation for someone.
What's the percentage? Because I don't think we talk about this. I mean, we're starting to now. I mean, obviously you have in your career, but me kind of being a user, just a cop, like an end user, a practitioner, not a licensed therapist, although I have all this training, it's like I'm aware of it. But at the core value, I wouldn't have known any of this stuff when I was on the job. So I want to ask you, kind of pretending I don't know what I know now, but what's the percentage that you think of people, cops, fire, EMS, anybody in the first responder that you treat that has the childhood trauma? What's that percentage look like for you? And then are you surprised that they are surprised, your clients and patients, or so many of them surprised that that's part of like what their struggles are?
Yes. So it's hard having to go into this. I have to say, I'm not seeing the first responders who are doing completely well, had a great childhood and just said, I want to be a fireman one day. And they had a pretty decent childhood, because some of those people do exist, whether we believe it or not. So, but those are not the ones that I end up seeing, right? So my viewpoint of who's in my office, it would be 100%. But probably 80 to 90%, I would say, have gotten into this line of work because of childhood. A lot of us grew up with domestic violence, alcoholism, utter chaos, right? Maybe we were abandoned by a parent or two. And all of those situations lend themselves to someone wanting to go and then help the world and make it so that other people don't have to feel the way they do. Yeah. So the bulk of them are that. You're that. I'm that. If I surveyed every first responder I know, it's the majority.
Yeah.
Those people that just had a great life and just decided to do it, I think that's wonderful too, but we also have to remember those people, now they're going to be exposed to stuff that they weren't exposed to before. But it is very, very surprising when you connect the dots, because first responders are incredibly smart, astute, observant, but sometimes when it comes to themselves, they're not. And so they are utterly shocked when they're in your office and you say, so is it possible that you felt like a failure because your dad told you you were one? And you see the face change, the demeanor change. And that's just being a therapist and looking at the history and what the person has told you, and then sort of helping them connect the dots. People are floored. It is all of this subconscious that is impacting people on a daily basis, and they don't realize it.
And then they're bringing that home. They're bringing that to work. They're mixing it around.
Yes.
If you don't heal yourself. And
yes.
I can imagine how chaotic somebody's brain. I mean, I was like that. How confused and chaotic things inside were at one point. And I wasn't sure, what was true, what was not, what was real, what was fake. You just, the world just looked a little different to you for me, because I was so confused about the situation. And I think it just gets back to this brain. This thing is so complex. And we just look at the outside, like, oh, we do our cosmetics, we get our haircuts, but we never actually look inside this exterior, which doesn't mean a whole lot, is this most complex organ that is driving everything we do. everything we say, our actions, our behaviors, and it's amazing. And for first responders, we have to understand this and really try to win this. And when I say win it, like defeat the demons or anything you can possibly can to stay in the fight. And sometimes that means going all the way back to childhood. There's nothing wrong with that.
Right.
But it's that fear of not wanting to do it, like you mentioned earlier, that I think just drags that thing longer and out. And God forbid you take your life or you get divorced or you commit a crime. Like all these, the horrible kind of rock bottoms that none of us want to get to, we're trying to avoid for others. So I just think that being a little vulnerable, if we can just be a little vulnerable, realize that this thing's always in flux, it's always in changing, and be mindful and aware that, okay, I'm going through some changes. I got to kind of bring people like Bonnie in to help me fix it and get back to what it used to be. Every one of us has a capability to do that.
Definitely. And there's a lot of denial that goes on too, right? People make choices, or they sometimes know that they're ignoring an elephant, but I can't force them to deal with the elephant until they're ready. You know, and sometimes that ready is the rock bottom, the bottom of a bottle. Sometimes it's a spouse who says, like, I'm done with you yelling at me. If you're not going to get help, we're finished. You know, or someone is threatened to lose their kids. You know, unfortunately, a lot of those moments where people decide to get help, they tend to be when they really hit the bottom. You know, we're trying to get people to not ever get there. That's why you do what you do. I do what I do. You know, I'd love to be in the police academies and EMT classes and, you know, fire school. Put me in front of these people before they go out there, because we could have them thinking about this now before we start throwing all kinds of stuff on top of them.
That's a great point, Bonnie. We almost should be mandatory that people like you, me, anybody, people that have these abilities to really put a light onto what the job's going to be like, to start preparing them in the academy, start really preparing them. And it's ugly because I know we don't want to show them the bad of this job, but really I think we're being the best leaders. We're being the most care focused towards our people in our job when we prepare them for the pitfalls of it. Because we're here doing it too. It's like, hey, I'm here too. I've done it too. So I'm not different than you. And we have to prepare if we want to stay and serve people at a high level. I tell you, there's nothing worse. And I've been in this situation before when you're not optimal, you're not performing at an optimal level because of emotional health, mental health, and yet you're expected to perform and do all these things for others. And it hasn't happened a lot to me. And I had to, like what my certified recovery specialist job, take a break and really kind of reel it back in. But it stinks when you're trying to be there for people and you realize, hey, I can't be there like they need me to be. And that just comes back to being self-aware and realizing I got to do some self-care and come back, you know, take some time off and come back.
Well, it also adds this whole other really a layer of anxiety. So it could be anticipatory anxiety, right? If I'm not doing well internally, mentally, and I'm really struggling trying to fix something alone, and then I have a job like yours or an EMS, you're wondering, like, what kind of call am I going to go on next? And one mistake costs people's lives. So then you have that additional pressure of, not only do I have all this going on, but now I'm scared that I'm going to let that hurt somebody by accident. And then there's the whole anxiety over that. So to me, it gets layered and layered and layered. So if we could fix it, then you wouldn't have that anticipatory anxiety when you're going into work, because you're not bringing that stuff with you on the calls.
That's a great point.
And that's real. People are terrified of what's to come. And, you know, I've worked with people too who've made a mistake on a call, you know, and they maybe were raked over the coals for it, or no one checked on them, or they were whatever it is. Those things are so damaging, because every single time that person comes to work from now on, they're going to be scared.
Yeah, we got to create better environments for them, right? For everybody to allow them to make those mistakes or to have those anxieties. I remember the last 18 months pulling up to the police department and sitting outside. You know, I'd always get there. I was one of the first ones to get there, and I'd sit out there early and I would just do some breathing exercise for 10 minutes because I had such anxiety of walking in the door, not the community, of walking into the door of the police station. And that was normal to me. I just thought, take your breaths, move on. Like, this is part of the job. And looking back in reflection, it's like, man, if we could create some better environment. So, you know, not everyone's we're going to be able to please everybody, take care of everybody. But I think we're just like, we're going after the low hanging fruit right now. We're putting some gyms in our police departments. We're doing some basic stuff and saying, look at all the stuff we're doing for health. But really, we got to go more. We got to do more, because creating these better environments Even talking about anxiety, if we just talked about it inside the police department and inside of our units, think about that for a second. You're sitting around roll call, whatever the meeting of the day is, and you guys are talking about, hey, anybody dealing with any anxiety or anybody got any emotional health stuff they want to share? Any tips or tricks you came back on you want to share with the group? That'd be amazing if we could get to a point,
Yeah.
maybe not every day or every topic, but create a place where if you need to talk about it, you can talk about it.
My concern for police especially is they're alone in their cruiser. One protective factor for fire and EMS is that we work in teams, right? And usually when we go back, again, if you're in city EMS, you're sitting in the rig, the two of you on the street corner waiting for the next one. But in some places, just being able to go back to the firehouse or the EMS station, sit around a table, talk to each other, debrief what's happened. It makes me really sad when I think of those police officers at 2-3 in the morning who go do the cardiac arrest or the terrible baby call, and now they're in their cruiser all night in the dark alone with no support.
I never thought about that, Bonnie. And that through that lens, you're absolutely right. I can't tell many police officer suicide. I can think of 3 right off the bat that I know where they took their life inside the police car.
Yeah.
And if you had a partner, you probably wouldn't have been able to do it then. Maybe you probably would have done it somewhere else, but you're minimizing that harm. You're reducing the harm.
It's just, I don't know. There's no easy fix for that particular situation, but I think these jobs can be very isolating. So to the extent that we culturally in the first responder world especially can be there for each other and can build a safety net around each other, everybody needs that to some degree. Some people have really, really intact, healthy families, and they may not rely on work as much for that. But some of the people who come to first responder world have no family, or they are alone. And so you have to just think about everyone's fighting this battle of life, right? We all are. We all have things at home, at work, whether you're a civilian or a responder. And we need to be kind. We don't know what people are facing. And, maybe me sharing my story or being vulnerable and talking to you about my feelings on something, maybe the next time you're having a bad time, you'll talk to me.
Yeah.
Right? And that's ultimately how you break the pattern and break the stigma. It doesn't have to be expensive. It could just be like, let's get back to basics as human beings.
Isn't it crazy? Like all the answers to this they're all holistic. The recruitment retention issue, the mental health issue, they're all holistic solutions, man. More connection, more conversations. Realize that we're all dealing with the same stuff. It's just, and I'm reading articles of departments throwing 6 figures at training solutions to help their agencies. And I'm not saying it's negative, but if you're not having those one-on-one conversations, if you're not building a culture of conversations and connection, I don't know what training is going to help. On a consistent basis, fix the morale of the department. It takes daily connections, daily interaction. So,
well, and look, we need funding. Before we move on, we do need funding for wellness programs, right? We need funding for that great gym that people could use. We need the peer support team to have a budget to run a workshop or to take people out for a picnic day or whatever it is, Right. So that stuff is really important, the programming and the systems things that we can put in place. But behind all of that could be more basic and more just understanding human needs.
Is it because have you run into some organizations or people invest so much into training or development that they kind of forget that it's really the basic stuff, it's the day-to-day stuff that's the most important. It's that consistent practice or meditation or, and maybe we spend so much money, we have so much technology available to us, we forget that just the basics of what we need to do.
I think it's partly that, but I also think that we forget the pressure on leadership. We forget the chiefs, the brass, the captains, because they're all getting pressure from people on the outside that we don't even know. And I think sometimes the budgeting and the dollars and cents and just some of that stuff that makes people really upset, some of it is coming from pressures that we don't even understand exist, right? So it's kind of sad because I think sometimes to justify programs, people have to spend a certain amount of money or they have to look like they're being innovative and bringing in the newest, best thing. Because that's what people on the outside want to see. And for
Interesting. Yeah.
police work especially, there's so much pressure just from society right now for everyone to be on their best behavior, to be functioning their best, to have the best equipment, to have the best surveillance techniques, right? There's just so much pressure. Sometimes the pressures drive the ship rather than what we all really know would matter.
Yeah, that's a great point. I love your perspective about it because everybody's dealing with pressures and
Yeah.
especially government, the political ambition of so many doesn't mean that everybody's trying to get ahead. But what happens is, you know, like you said, everyone's got someone to answer below, someone's got someone to answer above. And if we don't openly communicate kind of what's going on in our lives, it's easy to assume and get jaded or cynical about what someone's doing or somebody's doing. But we got to come together. We got to work together. Stop making assumptions and realize, start sharing things. Hey, this is what I'm dealing with. This is what we're dealing with. Let's work together and try to make it happen. Do you feel like, where do you feel like this is just mental health overall is going to be in 5 years? Like, do you think it's going to get better by all the advocacy and people talking about it? You do? Okay.
I do, because every day I go onto Instagram or LinkedIn and I see a new podcast. I see a new mental health awareness piece for civilians and first responders. So I do see a difference down the road. I believe in it wholeheartedly. Otherwise, I wouldn't do the work. You know, when I go to bed at night and I put my head on my pillow, I feel like I did everything I could that day. And when I get up the next day, it's like, all right, we got to push that stone up the hill a little bit more today. And we're trying to hit it at all angles. You are too. You know, we try to get top down. We try to get bottom up. We get anybody that can listen in the middle to help us. So
exactly,
I think
right. Yeah.
the more of us that do the work and talk about it, shout from the rooftops, the more we are making a difference. Even in the last 2 years, I've seen a huge difference. Where I want to see the difference is the suicide rates. I want to see them zero one day. You know, it's not acceptable. The amount of people that are completing suicide, it's not something that I'm comfortable or okay with. So as long as I can be a therapist and be out in the world, I'm going to do everything I can to try to save every one of those people within reason, you know, but I think knowledge helps people. So they might get sick of people like you and I talking about it all the time, but if we keep talking about it, we're going to inspire others to do the same thing.
Yeah. And you know, it's neat. Like, we're like creating a time capsule with all the content we create and all these conversations that we create and put out online. These things are out there in perpetuity, you know, like 20 years from now, some 20-year-old kid when we're in our 50s or 60s, you know, wanting to get into law enforcement might find this chat online, you know, in this grainy video from 2024 and watch it and be like, oh, okay, well, I learned a couple of things. Like, to me, that is the coolest thing of being able to give back. Real quick about you, can I ask you a couple personal questions?
Absolutely. Yeah.
What is it for you if you had to put one or two things that got you to where you're at in life today? Like, as we're sitting here talking, maybe not into this field, but like Bonnie Roomily standing here today, like, what are a couple things that got you to this point in life?
Childhood trauma, and resilience. So those are my two things. I think the trauma helped to build resilience, or I wouldn't be able to be the person I am, to go through the things I have, or to listen to the things that I hear all day. You know, someone said to me the other day, oh, you're not going on calls anymore. And I said, well, hold on a minute. I'm going on hundreds of calls a year, and they're only the bad ones.
Oh.
I don't get anybody coming to tell me about the sweet ones. I get the worst. So I do kind of feel like I go on calls, to be honest with you. But if I hadn't gone through my own childhood trauma, and lots of it, you know, I'm talking attachment trauma, domestic violence, alcoholism. I mean, the list that all first responders, have you heard of the ACEs score? You know, there's that series of questions. I mean, I'm truthfully higher than some of my clients on the ACEs scale. But if I hadn't gone through those traumas, I wouldn't be who I am. So is it better to think that life would have been better without all of that? Absolutely. You know, but that's why we try to make a good life for our children and the next generations coming after us. So I see myself as the cycle breaker. You know, it all perpetuated and cycled until it ran into me. And boy, was it sorry, because that's where my resilient side comes in. You know, I do have a resilience. I think part of it was born in me, but part of it I think grew with everything that I had to face. And so when I'm sitting with clients and they're talking about issues, and sometimes they'll say something like, "Oh, but you have no idea," and I'm like, "Oh," but I know what to say back. I know the questions to ask. I can instill some encouragement and hope in them that one day things could be better. And from time to time, when boundaries allow, yeah, if I think it's helpful to the client and it's not, you know, therapeutically destructive in any way, I might share a little something and say, look, I understand how you're feeling, but you can get to the other side of this. Because I feel that because I've gotten to the other side of so many different things, I'm confident that anyone can. It's just hard work. It's hard.
Yeah, you're right about that. It's hard. When I read Brene Brown's The Power of Vulnerability, it really just did a lot for me because you just touched on this. You said about when boundaries allow and it's not therapeutically destructive, you will throw out something to what I imagine is to gain their trust or be relatable.
Yeah.
Which at the end of the day, you're trying to get them to trust you, because if you can trust you, then they're going to listen to you.
Yeah.
And I found that like those little pockets of vulnerability, it can't be blabbing and be unprofessional, but the little pockets of vulnerability make absolutely monumental waves and create tons of impact when done right. So I celebrate you for that, because like if I was sitting in your chair and you weren't sharing anything with me, I'd be listening to you out of respect, because I'm a respectful person. But if you were to share something about you, I'd pick my head up and look at you. And then I'd start to look at you. I'd see you differently. I know I would. I know my brain is.
Right.
And I imagine you get the guy or girl who comes in with their arms crossed. If you can find that story, find that vulnerability, and make that trust happen, I imagine they go from this to just this blubbering mess, and they're moldable. They're like clay, and you're guiding them, and it's an incredible process that takes place when done right. When all the factors are working together, you got the right client, accountable, ready to change, self-aware, in the contemplation stage or the action stage of change. You got the right therapist, and man, there's absolute magic. I've experienced it myself in my life that happened. So I appreciate you sharing that and saying that, because I think that's really the magic sauce, is using your lived experiences. And I don't know why more people don't. I guess it's just a fear that you're some professional or you're going to get jammed up.
Well, I think it's hard because we're taught. I mean, I came from a school where they taught us you don't share anything about yourself. You don't have a picture of a family member in your office. I mean, I had some professors who would say you shouldn't even have a wedding ring on. You know, you're blank slate.
Wow.
But then, you know, you get out into the world and you start having a practice. And certainly with first responders, the boundary is different. And when they know that I'm one of them, I mean, I have that working in my favor as well, because a lot of the responders that come to see me, they already know that I have been in EMS for more than half of my life. There's already a trust there, which is great. And I feel fortunate about that, because right off the bat, they know this person gets it. I don't have to explain everything to them. You know, so being taught that way. But then when I started working with first responders, I realized no, they need to see us as real people who fail and flounder as well. And to the extent that I can share that, I'm happy to do it when I know it's for the right reason and for the person. If I was just sitting there and sharing it for myself to feel good, then that's not the right reason. But I do feel that I think very long and hard about each client. And sometimes you just have that perfect moment that, you know, if you say to them, I was you. You know, I had an example of a client who was not a first responder, but they were raising a foster child. And, you know, they were very, very scared about, well, gosh, the child's parents abandoned her, and how on earth is she going to be okay? And I thought about it, and I looked at him, I said, she's going to be okay. I was her. I'm okay. And she has you. You're her parent now, and you're not going to let that happen. You know, he just looked at me like, oh my God. But I didn't have to say anything more. I didn't have to go into much further. But he understood what I was saying. And it was like this example smacking him in the face of, we focus on the negative. We focus on there's no way that a human could get through some of the things that we all talk about or see. But there's a good chance they will. And with the right support network around them and the right love, and luckily, even raising kids, we have so many tools now. People have OT, PT, speech therapy, EMDR, child therapy. I mean, the list goes on of the interventions that we could impart in a child's life. And so honestly, that's the other thing I told this client. I discussed, look, you have all these resources at your disposal. You're using all of them. You're good parents. You're engaged. And once he sort of heard all of that, no, I can't promise everything's going to be okay, but I helped him have hope that everything could be okay. Not promising that it would, but,
How confident were you when you said that to him in that moment?
Very, because for the amount of hours I spent with him talking about the parent that he was, I could see that he wouldn't let that happen.
How are you so confident to deliver that?
That just comes from inside of me. That's that resilient part.
Can I make an observation?
No, yes, you can.
Because you have, like you said, you have walked through so many damn fires. And this is what I'm saying. Like, when you have somebody with all that lived experience and they speak from a place of authenticity and confidence, and you said he kind of stared right through you or looked at you, it was like, I imagine if I was there and I had somebody deliver, like the way you just said that, calm, short form speech, just short sentences, but low tone, but high confidence. You're like, all of that in a crisis moment is so damn calming. People don't realize it, or maybe you have if you're in a critical situation, but when there's chaos going around and you have somebody around you using their confidence and lived experience to deliver calmness, you remember that. I mean, it's a feeling that you cannot remember. You might not remember your name, but they remember the man. There was this girl on the call. I don't even know who she was, but she made me feel calm. And it's just a great lesson of this first responder space. We all have the ability to show up in chaos, whatever that chaos is, fire, police, EMS. We all know what that is for us. What if we all just showed up a little bit more calm and put that calm version on for those people and practice being calm, practice being the one in control? I just think that we can do a lot of good for people. We don't realize how we make them feel. That Maya Angelou quote, people forget what you did, forget what you said or whatever.
Yes.
But they'll never forget how you made them feel. And I feel like that some feedback some of those people like you get is like, man, they made me feel good about this for all as horrible as that situation was. And that's an amazing thing that you can do as a first responder.
Yeah, it absolutely is. So if people can tap into that confidence inside, and like I said, most responders are comfortable with chaos. So you're able to sit with this storm that isn't your own and figure out, what do I need to do here? Right? And that's an asset. That's a benefit. But use it in your own life. Don't just use it on a call at work. Like, you have to throw that lifeline to yourself. Because I guarantee you'll help that many more people at work.
Yeah. What's that empty vessel? You can't serve from an empty vessel. I think it's a quote. Self-care. And it's so important because it's like that oxygen mask. You got to put yours on first. Put on others. Bonnie, this was an awesome chat. I can't wait to blast it out with people and have everybody hear like you and what you do. I know you're so active on socials anyway, but I just think it's a great conversation that I just don't hear many of. I was actually YouTubing it, Google, and there's tons of YouTube videos in EMDR, but like not just a conversation like this. It's like a lot of people telling you what it is, but you don't get a whole lot of like, this is what I experienced. You don't have a clinician talk and somebody went through it. I just think it's a really neat chat, and I think it's going to help. I know it's going to help one person. One person is going to reach out and do it because of this chat. But imagine if 5 or 10 do it. That's pretty neat. So thank you for doing this.
It's very cool. Well, and I thank you for the partnership. I feel like we've become friends over time. You were on our podcast. So I really, really thank you because I know it's genuine and the work you're doing is really good. So
thank you.
It's a pleasure. And however I can help you, whatever I can share, I'm always happy to.
Awesome. We'll keep up the great work. We'll try to get send some people your way that need some EMDR service, need some healing. All the best to you, though. Take care.
Thank you. You too, Chad.
Thank you for being a part of this community. We have to stick together and encourage each other. It's through the empowerment and support of one another that we can help each other overcome whatever season we're in, weather the storms. Please go to my website, motivate-change.com, and there you can buy the book. You can also get the book directly off Amazon. But you can also see some of the other coaching services, speaking services, and other things that we offer to really help people develop into the best people that we can be. Thank you for being a part of this community. Together we can do it.